Hello, world. I am really grateful and honored to be able to introduce you today to Natalya Spicker. Natalya is the Vice President of Growth and Strategic Partnerships at She Works, which is a tech startup that helps to bridge gender and unemployment gaps. Natalya came into the Sorcerer School on-ramp with some really powerful intentions. She came into the on-ramp to amplify her power and facilitate expansion within her life and her work, to enhance her connection to the cosmos, to that greater wisdom, as well as connect more deeply to the unique wisdom within herself. She also came in to shift more deeply into living into and out of her purpose and to create alignment in all areas of her life and work. Now, Natalya has actually been through the Sorcerer School on-ramp 2 times. So I'm really excited for her to be able to tell you what that's like and what it can be like to go through the process, more than once. For those of you that don't know, the on-ramp is the foundational model that we work with inside of Sorcerer School, where we access mind, body, soul, and spirit combined for cellular level transformation. Natalya, because she's been through the on-ramp, she's on her way into Sorcerer School. So she's also going to be upgrading her intentions pretty soon. I'll name just a couple of them. So her upgraded intentions now to enhance her emotional intelligence as a leader, to connect more powerfully in a co-creative relationship with her boss, and to channel her power as a leader in a way that really honors and expands everyone and everything and helps her to expand to hold more in leadership with greater lightness. So as you can see, her intentions are really powerful, which says a lot about who she is. So I'm excited for you to meet her. Natalya, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's an honor to be featured on this portion of what you do, Jordana. Thank you for everything you've done for me.
So tell us, how has it been so far? Like, if you just were to give a brief synopsis before I go into more specific questions, how is it going in the on-ramp so far? Like, what's it been like?
Yep. So the on-ramp for me has been a bit of a safety zone, if you will, for me to come every week, show up when I need to, and also be patient with myself when I can't make it to those weekly gatherings, or even when I can't make it to the recorded content. It's allowed me to feel that there's a very receptive space where I can be myself, be authentic, show up with things that are weighing on me, troubling me, things that I feel can't be unblocked. And, for me, the on-ramp has always been an enabler of just complete flow and freedom. So I feel like my soul gets a massage every time I show up. So for me, it's going wonderful. There's some days that because I get too busy with work, I can't make it, but it's interesting because the learnings and everything that I've taken away from even the first on-ramp, they're so powerful as messages and as, like you mentioned, transformative measures in your own body and in your own brain that they stick with me beyond that week that I absorb that information. So during the weeks that I can't make it, I still feel the power of it. So it is a very, very powerful, I want to call it incubator. I know you call it container, but in reality, it's just been a fantastic safe harbor for me to be myself. And as a reminder that, hey, it's going to be okay if you can't make a certain commitment, just carry on and, remember what you learned and keep doing you. So far it's added great balance to my life.
That's such a great reminder. Thank you. How did you know that it was time for a new level of self-development and leadership development?
I knew it was time because I'm typically a very independent person that I try to sort things out myself, or I'll find that book and that book just sets me on the right course and I feel great. When I met you, it was right before the pandemic hit, and I wasn't really thinking I'm going to need something. So I think the timing of it was obviously very, very essential into me saying, hey, I need something, because I had a feeling that there was something, whether it was brewing or coming my way, that was going to be bigger than me. And also there was a yearning for something bigger than me that I had been trying to for a few months, maybe a year, to get to. And by that, I mean, just trying to achieve my optimal, connection with my optimal self. And I realized that based on my filter and my learnings, my experience, I couldn't get there on my own. So I had been through life coaches. I had been through psychologists. I had already talked my friends' ears off, my family members' ears off. Like, nobody could really point me in the right direction. And so for me, it was an understanding of like, I know that I'm that person to get me there, but I don't know how to unlock myself to get there. So when I met you, it was just like, wait a second, I think she's going to help me unlock those things. So it wasn't about putting like needing a person per se, or a service or a channel to do that. It was more of just like, I know there's something bigger coming. I know that there's a need for more connection with myself. And of course, I think the pandemic accelerated all of it, because it was a reminder of, there's no better time than now. And I remember you telling me that it's like, if you want expansion, well, you just got a pandemic. So the pandemic's going to help you. It's going to help teach you how to expand because of the contrast that it's giving you. But I think that the timing was just perfect, and I can't really put it into words, but I just knew it was the right decision.
What did you feel like was in the way of that connection that you wanted to your optimal self? Like, what were the obstacles there?
Myself. I was the biggest obstacle. When I say myself, it's just a very inflated ego, a lot of fear, acting out of lack. So really just the exacerbated ego saying, hey, I'm here to protect you, but I'm already out of, like, beyond my wits. Like, I don't know what else to do. You know, it was causing a lot of friction. So internally there was just a lot of turmoil. It was really just inflated ego manifesting itself in so many different ways. And the tricky part was it wasn't a person or a situation or something that was causing that conflict. It was internal. So because it's so part of me, it didn't seem like something that was alarming. But I think the pandemic really just, like you mentioned earlier, held up a giant mirror to me, and it was like, this is the stuff you're dealing with right now, in case you were wondering. So
when we talk about how our ego shows up in our external world, it can be hard to see sometimes what the real mirrors are. Like, oh, you mean I'm creating that? What were some of the logistical or tangible things that you started to realize, oh, that is actually my inflated ego creating it?
In every part of my life, it manifested itself. So I'll give a few examples. Professionally, right before COVID, I was at the height of my career, like the best year I had ever had in 7 years. And it was a sales job. So you can imagine how hard that is sometimes to achieve. And that's a bold statement. It's like, wow, like best year of your life. And even then I doubted myself. Like, I had imposter syndrome left and right. And that imposter syndrome was just, that lack of faith in myself, that lack of belief that I could do it. Despite me doing so well, I wasn't being able to enjoy the most amazing year of my life. So that really created a little bit of a contrast, because it was just like, I should be so thrilled right now, but I'm not even allowing myself to enjoy it. So professionally, I doubted myself left and right. In terms of on a personal note, I would say right before I met you and started Sorcerer School, I met the love of my life. And it worked out in such a beautiful way that it was like, there's no doubt that this is my person. And even then it was like similar to what I was going through professionally. It was like, I've reached, like everything that I've wanted on a personal, emotional level myself. And I have found that in another person. Like, I just won the lottery. And even then there were moments where I would feel insecure. I would question, like, am I good enough for this? Or, we have an age difference. So that started playing tricks on me. Like, am we here for the right reasons? I mean, you can imagine all of the questions that can come up through that. So I wasn't allowing myself to enjoy the relationship, and I was questioning myself more than anything. So personally, that was something I was dealing with on a personal, like, friendship type relationship with my parents. I was going through a lot of, hey, I don't feel comfortable coming out to them yet, stuff like that. And there was, I believe that was a huge block that was keeping me from a lot of other things. But I guess what I would say in general is that I noticed these blocks as opposed to just writing, and flowing through them as if nothing was there. Like, I started becoming aware of the blockages. So I don't know when and how that happens in people's lives, or if it happens the same for everybody. I'm sure it doesn't. But for me, I just became, it's almost like, in your surroundings, sometimes at home, you don't notice a certain object that's been there like for years and years, or, your neighbor might have a tree that you've never noticed, but all of a sudden, like one day you're like, oh my God, I never noticed that was there. So that started happening with myself, with everything that was blocking me. And it came in the form of professional, personal with my partner, and personal with friends and family that didn't know everything about me that there was to know. So I think all of that joined together and said, okay, it's time for you to show up as authentically as possible. And I believe that's when I met you, and I'm like, okay, to show me how to do this, because that's where the power lies, is in your true self and authenticity, and you owning that.
Yeah. So how did you know, like at what point did you become a yes to Sorcerer School? What was it? Was there something that tipped you over the edge to say yes, something that specifically spoke to you that was the point where you just knew that this was what you wanted to do?
I think for me, it was that second conversation with you where you, by just being so understanding and flexible and loving and compassionate and hearing me out and being obviously very true to what the work that you do, that right there just, and as a whole solidified it. I was quite scared at the beginning because I had met you and then I was like, okay, I'm going to think about it. And then COVID would just literally accelerated. It was like, oh, we're going to stay home now. And oh, wait, what? Like my finances might be impacted. And I mean, clearly that was a tricky part for me because I was thinking out of lack prior to accepting Sorcerer School. So I had to really battle through that. I think you and I had a conversation where I remember I shared my doubts with you and I was like, look, I'm scared because I think I'm going to run out of money and all this stuff. And you were so understanding and you didn't push me to accept. You basically gave me it's almost like you gave me a preview of what was to come, meaning you explained Sorcerer School as a tool that it is and the messenger that it is to give me the tools that I need, and that the money and the finances is just, honestly, that's just energy, and in a way, like that conversation made me realize that I need to go through this and I need to have that kind of faith in this kind of environment to really achieve the intentions that I had shared with you, such as expansion. I remember you were saying, like, if you want expansion, well, this is how you're going to get it. And that, I think, if you asked me about a moment that really stuck with me, that solidified the decision, it was that Sorcerer School is not a place to come where you're feeling great and where all of your planets and stars have aligned. It's the equivalent of how life is. Life happens sometimes not in your own schedule and sometimes out of your expectations, and you learn how to deal with it. And in that learning and mastering everything that goes with that, you're going to grow if you allow yourself to do that. If you see yourself as that second conversation where you're like, look, expansion is not going to come to you on a silver platter. Sometimes it's not going to come easy, and it's not even about money. It's about your ability to believe that this is a tool that can work, because I believe that it can work for you. And here we are.
When did you really start to see results after that? Like, what was your experience coming in, and how long did it take for you to get some results?
When I made that decision to say, yes, let's go for it, let's commit, I placed just full trust in the program and the people in it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to accept, and commit myself to it. So there was no resistance. The level of woo-woo and the level of practicality and the level of real world application was perfect. For me, I would say the third, fourth week, we did an exercise where we were unblocking certain things, as you do in your sessions. And in one of your classes, I was completely, obviously not under the influence of anything. And we did an exercise and I truly gave it a shot. And usually your sessions are in the middle of my day, so my brain is going 1,000 miles an hour, but I was able to quiet my brain. And the moment that I allowed that to sink in, it was really going down the rabbit hole. I think that was one of the sessions that we were doing. And I was able to really see, I'll leave the details out, but I was able to have such a sense of understanding of things about my past, about my childhood, about who I am as an adult, where I want to go. And it was through that exercise, it was able to just connect it all and explain why this is happening, why you're blocked, why you're unblocked now, where to go next. And it was like in a matter of seconds. So I don't know how to describe that, but for me, that was the first unblocking experience that I had. And in the following sessions, the weeks after, I noticed that if I approached it with a clear, quiet mind, that I would get those results. And in some cases, if I was preoccupied with something else or worried about something about work or whatever, that they wouldn't have the same effect. So all that is to say that Sorcerer School is as good as you show up as, it's as good as you intend for it to be, because the material landed with me differently some weeks or others, depending on my level of my stress levels or the noise in my brain. So I would say 3 to 4 and I felt a massive, like, oh, wow, like blindfold off. And the weeks that I didn't was just because I wasn't showing up as intentionally as I should have been.
Through your experience in the on-ramp, what transformed there? What results have you gotten so far?
So I quit my job, which I thought I would never do. I thought when I first met you, I wanted to figure out how to be the best version of myself for that company, for that industry, for that group of people. And I asked for expansion, and I absolutely got it. I was able to decide that it wasn't the career for me. And I thought that would never, ever, ever happen. So just having the courage to take that leap of faith was, I mean, if I could sum it up, that was, I mean, that's a huge result, because I would have otherwise probably settled and stayed within that company, which wasn't a bad play. It was a great career, but I asked for expansion. And so now I'm working for a tech startup that focuses on changing the world, versus what I was doing before, which was just focused on South Florida. Right. So now it's like, okay, you wanted expansion. Here's the world. Professional expansion. Check. I also moved out of South Florida. I was in Miami prior to this, and we had always been wanting some type of change, but I was always scared to let go of Miami. My parents always wanted me to stay in Miami so they could be closer to me or feel closer to me because they're in another country. And I was always scared to leave out of responsibility or out of guilt or whatever. And I convinced myself that I loved Miami, that Miami was home for about 7 years. And then I met my partner, and we were both like, we don't want to stay here forever. And she started planting the seed. So I would say about 3 months into Sorcerer School, we just had to make the decision of like renewing our lease or moving. And I was like, let's just move. Let's just go. And now I'm in Portland, it's your hometown. And you know more than anyone that this place is just, I mean, it's not just physically expansive because of all the nature that's here, but just the frequency, the vibration is just an invitation for you to not shrink down to levels of, inadequacy and lack and fear. Like, everyone here is such a walking inspiration to be more expansive. So people expansion, check. Geography expansion, check. So I would say those, and I can share a lot of other examples, but for the sake of time, I would say those are the highlights, and the ones that I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And the fact that it's your hometown, I thought that was pretty fun.
Pretty neat. Yeah. So you have been through the on-ramp a couple different times. I'm most curious to know, like, what was your experience like the second time, or how did it compare?
So you're right. I went through it twice. And mainly it was because I was scared to commit to the actual Sorcerer School itself, because I was afraid for my finances. At the time where we had to decide, do I move forward with on-ramp into Sorcerer School? It was right around the time that my whole book of business at my prior company just went through the ringer, and I was left with like probably 2 or 3 clients and lost a lot of my commissions. So financially, what I had put in the universe actually happened. I was affected financially by COVID. So for me, there was a fear there, and I felt so comfortable sharing that with you. And so you were like, look, it's okay. Like, just, you can go through on-ramp twice again, because that's part of the program that's there for that. And for me, it was a breath of fresh air. Number one, because it gave me time to sort out my finances. Not that I needed time off from Sorcerer School, because I feel like if I would have just continued with like faith, like just blind faith, I would have probably, arrived where I am right now. And the landing would have been a little better. Let's just say that. But I think I had to honor a pause in my life. So the second session of on-ramp was perfect for that, because it's almost like going back to college once you've graduated and saying like, okay, I want to take these classes and I want to really go after this content, because it almost presented itself as a warehouse full of amazing knowledge and wisdom. And I was able to go in and say, okay, this is the section that really resonated with me. And because I was familiar with the setup already, I was able to show up more authentically in a way where I was willing and ready to receive the transformation that was offered. So having that prior experience allowed me to almost make it work for me a little bit more, because I knew how to navigate it better. Before, it was just like, I'm open to anything. And I think that was a beautiful experience too, because there were days where actually most weeks it was exactly what I needed. It was like, oh my goodness, I was literally just talking about this, and you provided a solution that was so on point. So that was a beautiful part of like my first experience with it. But the second one around was more of a mature, emotionally grounded involvement, where I didn't miss as many classes. I made it really a point to organize myself and be patient with myself even more if I couldn't make it. So I would say it was a completely different experiences, but both to the point where I needed that second round to just really feel even more committed. It really validated and solidified everything I had felt about this experience from the moment I said yes.
Can you give us a brief description of the stuff you've done in the past, like maybe coaching or other leadership or self-development programs? What have you done in the past and how is this different for you?
So I've done everything. I mean, from high-level business coaching. So like these coaches were working with like CEOs and very corporate, very just like McKinsey type consulting, to all the way to tarot card readers, to energy workers, to healers, to Reiki sessions, to sound baths, to astral chart reviews or readings, life coaches, numerology experts, theta healers, psychologists, therapists, couples therapists. I've tried it all. And I would say this differs. And before we keep going, all of those people were incredible and they impacted my life in the best way that moment called for. And it was perfect for that time, because if I would have met you 10 years ago, I would have been like, what is this? Because I wasn't ready for that. Right. And even then I would have probably been like, oh my God, but I want to know more, because there's very much a genuine curiosity that you inspire in others. And just by the name of the program, it's very much like, I think it awakens someone's spiritual curiosity. So the name you picked is incredible, because that's what really caught my eye. But to go back to your question, I think it's important to realize that Sorcerer School it's like a combination of all of those things in one container. The way that you carry out the program, I feel like it's a funnel of like, just the generality of what could plague someone, right? On a spiritual, emotional, psychological level, obviously with the focus on leadership, which I think is brilliant, because we can be professional leaders, but we can also be emotional leaders and we can be household leaders. So like leadership can be defined in such a broad way. But I think here you capture your audience in a way that everyone feels connected. And then that funnel goes down into just, where you start finding what resonates with you the most. For me, the difference between Sorcerer School and everything else is just it captivates, it sustains interest, it sustains healing, it sustains, and it does it you're doing it with a group of people, which is very difficult because you have so many personalities, but the way you structured it makes you feel like you're one-on-one, but you also feel not alone because you have other folks that are going through the same thing. So the concept is quite beautiful. It's like a group therapy session, but with the feeling of very intimate one-on-one and the safety of that, without the guilt that this is like an AA group or something where you have to be here. Like it's an invitation, and not even that, it's an investment you're making in yourself. So all of that combined, I think I mentioned all of these initiatives that I did in the past few years for a reason, because it almost for me groups the entire essence of all of that in one container and allows me to feel a sense of community from day one, which is rather rare to find. For me, it's just the combination of everything I was looking for so many years, and I finally found it.
Thank you. So let's get out our crystal balls. You are now on your way into Sorcerer School, right? Into the 9-month journey of Sorcerer School. What would you say if you were to, if you could look into 9 months or so from now, what might it look like? What are some of the things that you expect to change or have a sense will shift and transform for you as a result of where you're now headed?
What I hope for is really just a heightened version of what I've experienced in the last, since I started. I would say the last 6 to 8 months. So just an upgraded version of that. And by that, I mean, I felt a lot of physical and professional expansion with my first experience and leading up to right now, based on the results I shared with you all. I would expect the next 9 months to be more of an inward expansion, which I was seeking initially, but I don't think we set the intention to be either physical or internal or professional. It just unfolded that way. And I really trust that timing. So I feel that now I am in dire need of internal expansion. And by that, I mean, being able to hold the responsibilities that have been given to me now, because it is a lot. It's very, very heavy in a very good way, but I realize that I'm not primed right now internally to receive all of these things and to execute the way that I need to. So just like I was able to quit my job and decide to take another job and move to another city and build all of that, like that's what I'm seeking and hoping that cements itself with Sorcerer School. So I'm going to leave it broad and say just incredible internal expansion so that I can be not just a professional leader and a great partner for my CEO and boss, but also that I can be a great partner and co-leader within my relationship and with all of the personal relationships in my life that unfortunately did take a hit with COVID and with my focus shifting to purely work and all the physical expansion I was dealing with. So I really want to shift that focus back to the emotional and psychological side of things. So my hope is that I tap into new levels of that and find peace and extra time to sleep.
So point blank, last but not least, would you recommend Sorcerer School?
Yes, 100%. To anyone, even my parents.
That's huge.
Yeah, they're really
That's
conservative.
Huge.
But the reason why is because I think as a collective, we're shifting into this regardless. We're shifting into a new level of consciousness. We're shifting into eyes being wide open and noticing things and noticing synchronicities, but not, and a lot of people are noticing these things, but they don't know how to define that. They're just thinking, oh, it's a coincidence, or I manifested this, and they're like, oh yeah, whatever. And so I think collectively, we're all going through a transformation, and some people are curious enough to see it through and help define that. And those are the people that fall into your lap. But then for people that are a little scared maybe to acknowledge that they've been noticing these things, they feel very alone and they feel a little lost because they're like, something's happening and this whole COVID thing and things are changing. And I'm seeing all my friends like starting to get into like this weird talk about visualizing and manifesting and the cosmos and the universe. Like a lot of people are but they're still curious to know what that is. And I think that what you've created is an introduction into the new level of consciousness, not just personal, but also on the professional side. That's also one of the reasons I joined, by the way, because I feel that corporate America or professional whatever need more leaders that think this way. So I promote it, and I promote you expanding this message to others. But in general, I recommend it because ultimately people are going to find this information out, whether it's through themselves, whether it's the hard way, whether someone they truly love comes to them with this epiphany of like, hey, this is a better way to see life. And this is probably going to help explain why you go through these things. And this is probably going to help you do this. And as people are shifting into these new levels of like optimal selves or whatever you want to call it, other people notice, right? People notice like, but you've changed, or wow, like you've, tripled your income, or you started your own business, or you're not scared to do that anymore, or you just took a huge leap of faith and left a 7-year career. Like what happened? And also I think the people that emerge from your Sorcerer School, as they progress, they start expressing themselves differently. So their networks of people are now observing this huge change. Like for me, you saw the podcast I told you about. I created a podcast and I had always wanted to do that. And Sorcerer School gave me this boost of like, just go do it. Just start where you are. And believe it or not, that has helped open so many doors and communications and like invited people to just feel okay with being curious and wanting to explore. But my podcast just opened the door. Your school and your program is there to really, it's like the welcoming room of the doors that are open through not just the people that emerge from your program, but other people that are reaching new levels of consciousness. Like the curiosity that's sparked in those people that are reached through all this transformation. I believe that the Sorcerer School program is a great way to walk them through exactly what the heck is happening and how that relates to them. And at the same time, it allows explanations that feel very intimate. It almost gives you tools to operate the new normal, which is not digital working from home. It's the new normal is this new level of consciousness that we're all like tapping into and stumbling into or actively walking into. I think that Sorcerer School gives you literally that magic wand that says, okay, I am literally in control. And yes, I am backed by a huge, amazing force, which is God, source, universe, whatever, because we don't discriminate any of that here. And it gives you that magic little wand of saying like, if I want something, it will happen And I just have to be ready to receive and unfold and unpackage it depending on how it's presented to me. It gives you the tools you need to survive what's happening right now, to understand, not just survive it, but understand it and enjoy it, because this is a really great time.
I feel pretty complete, but is there anything that you feel like people that are maybe on the fence or, strongly considering it, but there still might be something holding them back, anything final you would add for them?
Yes. If you're like me and you've, at the beginning, obviously, and are having second thoughts or on the fence and the finances aren't there or the time isn't there, or you feel like you're just not going to, at the end of the day, the person has to be ready. They have to be mentally ready for this. And even if you're not, at least curious enough to see it through and trusting enough. So just remember, you're doing this for yourself and potentially for the world. And I don't know of a lot of other programs out there that can really not guarantee that, but really inspire that mindset in other people. So I would say have a heart to heart with yourself. And if that doesn't convince you, then have a heart to heart with Jordana. And I'm sure that's all it's going to take.
Thank you so much, Natalya. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for this amazing contribution.
Absolutely.
All right, everyone. I think we're complete. Thank you again so much. Bye, everyone.